So you've probably used an AI chatbot, right? You type in a prompt, you get a response. Simple. But what if your task is way too big for just one command? Well, today we're going way beyond that. We're diving into how to build these really powerful multi-step AI systems that can tackle complex projects from start to finish. Welcome to the world of agentic workflows. And this quote from Brunda Gadesha at IBM, it just nails the shift we're all seeing. AI isn't just an answering machine anymore, not even close. Instead, it's more like you can assemble a whole team of autonomous specialists that can reason through and actually execute an entire project for you.
So, what in the world is an agentic workflow? Well, think of it like creating a detailed project plan for your AI team. Instead of having one generalist try to do everything at once, you design a sequence of specialists. Each agent, each step, handles one specific part of the problem, and then passes its work on to the next. It creates this beautiful, logical flow from the very beginning to the final product.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about the core problem, why single, massive prompts just don't work for complex stuff. Then we'll look at the solution, a really cool pattern called prompt chaining. After that, we'll check out the toolkit, LangGraph, that lets you build these things, and then the fun part, a case study where we build an AI screenwriter. And finally, we'll wrap up with why this whole approach is such a massive game changer. Okay, first things first. We need to really understand the limitations we're trying to overcome here. Why can't we just write one giant, super detailed request, throw it at an AI, and just hope for a perfect result? Let's really dig into that question. Trying to get a large language model to write a full report, then generate some code for it, and create a summary, all in one go, it often leads to some pretty weird and unpredictable results. But what's actually breaking down behind the scenes? Honestly, it's just pure chaos. When you give an AI one massive prompt, it starts to get confused. It might forget the specific formatting instructions you gave it at the very beginning. By the time it gets to the end, you completely lose control over the output, and the risk of it just making stuff up, what we call hallucinating, it just skyrockets. And probably the worst part, when it fails, trying to figure out what went wrong is a total nightmare. You have no idea which of the 20 instructions in your giant request was the one that broke everything. So what's the fix? Well, we use this elegant design pattern called prompt chaining. And I really love to think of it as building an assembly line, but for ideas. At its core, prompt chaining is a beautifully simple idea. You just take a huge, complicated task and you break it down into a series of smaller, more focused steps. And here is the absolute key. The output from step 1 automatically becomes the input for step 2, which feeds step 3, and so on. It creates this guided, logical path for the AI to follow, making sure it never gets lost. And this assembly line analogy, it is the perfect way to picture it. Each prompt you write is like a highly specialized worker on the line. You've got one worker whose only job is to generate a great outline. The next worker down the line, their only job is to take that outline and expand it into prose. And the final worker just turns that prose into a perfectly formatted script. Each one is an expert at their one specific job. And the benefits of working this way are huge. First off, accuracy goes way up because each step is simple and focused. You also get incredible control. If the summary part of your workflow is a bit weak, you just go in and tweak that one summary worker, not the whole assembly line. Debugging becomes a piece of cake. You can see exactly which station on the line is having trouble. And the whole system is modular, which means you can swap out pieces or even reuse them in totally different projects. Okay, so this pattern is great in theory, but we need a tool to actually build these AI assembly lines. And that is where a really cool framework called LangGraph comes into the picture. LangGraph is a library that was designed specifically to build these multi-agent, multi-step AI systems. It basically lets you draw out your workflow like a flowchart, where each step is what we call a node in a graph. This gives you this really precise, fine-grained control over exactly how information flows through your system. Now, to build something in LangGraph, you really only need to know 4 main things. You have nodes. Those are your specialized workers. Each one is a little bit of code that performs one action. Then you have edges. That's the conveyor belt that connects your workers and defines the path. Then you get conditional edges, which are like the quality control inspector. They can make decisions and even send a piece of work back a step if it's not good enough. And maybe most importantly, you have the state. That's the shared memory, the clipboard that gets passed between every single worker so that the context and the history of the project is never, ever lost.
All right, that is enough theory. Let's make this real. We're going to see this in action by building something really fun and creative, an AI assistant that can write a short screenplay from just a simple idea.
The goal here is pretty straightforward. A user gives us a single sentence for a story idea. Something like, a whimsical fantasy for children about a lost dragon finding its home. Our workflow is then going to take that one little sentence and, step by step, turn it into a complete, ready-to-use script.
So the process kicks off with our very first node. Its only job is to look at the user's idea and figure out the genre and tone. So for our dragon story, it would immediately identify whimsical fantasy. That piece of information, the genre, is then saved to our shared memory, that state we talked about, so it can be passed on to the next worker.
Next up, Node 2 gets the task. It takes the original idea, but it also reads the genre from that shared state. Now, with all that context, its specialized job is to generate a short plot outline. And once that outline is ready, guess what? It gets added to the state too, making our shared memory even richer.
And the workflow just keeps on chugging along to Node 3. This worker takes that new plot outline from the state, and its only mission is to write one key scene, maybe the climax of the story, in just descriptive prose. It's not worrying about script formatting at all, just pure storytelling. And you guessed it, this new scene gets added to our state.
And finally, our last specialist on the line, Node 4, gets the handoff. It takes that prose scene, and its one and only job is to transform that story into a properly formatted screenplay, complete with character names and action lines. This is the final output from our little assembly line. And the magic that holds this entire complex process together? It's the state. It's that shared memory that makes sure every single node is on the same page. The genre, the outline, the prose version of the scene, it all gets carried along for the ride. This is exactly why our final dialogue writing node still knows the story is a whimsical fantasy, a decision that was made way back in step 1. Nothing ever gets lost.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Why is building AI systems like this such a big deal? Well, it's all about moving from just simple one-off requests to structured, repeatable AI reasoning.
So when you boil it all down, here are the big takeaways. Working this way gives you modularity and absolute control over the AI's logic. It drastically improves the reliability of your output by breaking big problems into small, manageable chunks. And here's the really interesting part. This rigid structure actually unlocks more creativity. By guiding the AI through a logical process, you can get these complex, coherent, and creative results that are just about impossible to get from a single prompt. We've just seen how these workflows can turn a simple idea into a whole screenplay. But this exact same pattern can be applied to almost anything, from analyzing financial data to planning a vacation to drafting a marketing campaign. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. If you could build an AI assembly line for any complex task in the world, what expert assistant would you build first?